we had editorial corrections. It was updated to include those, and it was dated when we provided it to the town for October 12th.
If I could just, I'm just looking at the minutes, also on the October 6th minutes, it says that there's a discussion and confirmation of review changes to site selection report. There was a motion that the report's conclusion and recommendation should include the ERO language from October 6th as verified with outside counsel, work done by the library program, final edits from the library. Motion was put forward by Jeannie Niles, seconded by Jen Sanders, unanimously approved.
Yes, it did.
Did that help?
We reviewed it and we approved it twice.
What portion of that is not complete for you?
I would have preferred the final report come back to this committee and be approved of what was done with editorial comments and then sent to the council. It wasn't clear approval in my view.
We approved the amendments to that report in our October 6th meeting. So we approved the report on September 26th. We provided that report to the Park and Rec Commission. There were editorial changes, also reflection of the discussion about the EIR that was included in the report. We reviewed that in our meeting on October 6th, and we approved those revisions. And that's the report that was provided to council. So that report was reviewed and approved by this committee in 2 separate meetings.
There's a motion by Kathleen Keegan to approve the September 15th minutes.
I'll second. Sure. All in favor? Aye. Do I have a motion to approve our minutes from the meeting of September 26th?
I have to abstain.
So I so move. I will second.
Yeah, I'll say.
All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain?
Abstained,
Karen,
Karen, Blitzen, and Marion. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes dated October 6th, 2011?
I so move.
A second.
Yeah, you go. I abstain.
All in favor?
Aye.
Just to clarify, Karen was abstaining. Not present. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of October 13th, 2011?
I'll second.
I abstain.
All in favor?
Aye.
Just to clarify, Karen was abstaining. On the October 13th. Okay, we're now on to item number,
Question?
yes?
Were any of those minutes available on your website prior to today so that the public could review those minutes? Or do those minutes not become public until after approval today?
They're not allowed to become public until the committee approves them, so they'll be going out.
Thank you.
And all of our minutes have been on our website. There are a number of committees that don't have updated minutes, but we have tried to keep our minutes on the website as timely as possible.
After today, these minutes will be on the website.
Yes,
When
but
Teresa can post them.
when Teresa can post them,
Thank you.
and she's done a pretty good job for posting them for us as timely as possible. Okay. The next item under discussion is the library building phase 2 direction. We want to an overview of the rest of the project schedule and a discussion of the other activities and tasks planned for phase 2. at the council meeting last week, which directed that the parking curbside pending meeting sequel requirements. So we're now moving into the next stage, which is to go through the environmental review process. And as part of that, or at some point, we are looking to recommend that the project manager work on this project. And that we had previously discussed with this committee preparation of an RFP for the project manager. And that RFP has been provided to the town, a draft was provided to the town that is currently being reviewed by staff and the city attorney. And I just felt that it would be appropriate to look again at the timing of that. And it's been some time since that RFP was submitted to the town for their review. It was in August. I did discuss that with staff, Public Works Director Mike this week, and he is in agreement that it would make sense, now that we're moving into the environmental review process, to have a project manager for this project, and that he would be providing comments on the RFP in the next couple of weeks, and that we would look to make a recommendation to the council at the December meeting. And at the same time, the city council will be reviewing the RFP and including with that the recommended form of contract with the consultant. So, given that, I just thought that it would be good for this committee to discuss whether or not we feel that that is an appropriate course of action. And we did have a subcommittee working on that RFP, and the subcommittee would incorporate staff's comments on the draft that we provided, and that would provide this committee a discussion of the differences between what this committee had prepared as a draft and what the staff comments were. And we have an opportunity then to sort of decide what form it would take, give it back to staff for their final review, including the library's review, and then make a recommendation to council. So we're looking at bringing to council a recommendation in December, perhaps. Then the responses would be January, have a month for responses. It's not as big a process in terms of reviewing as, certainly the responses of architects, and perhaps make a recommendation to the council on the recommended individual or firm to take over the role of project manager in February, which would be, I think, maybe good timing, because in looking at the environmental review process, it's a point in time when we would be in the public comment period, and it would be very helpful to have an individual working through that to make sure that all the comments and all the issues that were brought up during that review process were addressed. They would interface with policy.
When you first mentioned it, I thought, isn't this a little early to be starting to think about it? But then as you go through the steps and the time involved, but you're right, the time seems to be that you need to get going on that.
And I think we need it through the environmental process and through the rest of the planning.
And through the rest of the planning, because as we move through the environmental process, at some point we'll be looking to initiate an RFP for the phase 2 architect. They might be engaged during the environmental review process to the extent that any of their work could further inform the environmental review process. We'll know better as we go through that process and whatever recommendations the project manager for the project would help and assist us with that. So I just wanted to open up the discussion, and we discussed these matters earlier. We thought that we would be initiating the RFP for the Phase 2 architect right about now. And we thought also the project manager would have been maybe even a little earlier, but it postponed it a bit, and so I think that it's worthy of discussion, and
Did we get proposals from architects, from project managers already?
no, because the article was not,
Confusing this with
we drafted an RFP for a project manager and provided it to the town staff and the library for their comments. And we have not yet received those comments, either from the city attorney or town staff. We did receive the comments from library staff.
I think I'd like to recommend maybe we do this. After we get the comments from staff and the city attorney, I think I'd like to at least see whether or not a couple of other people who've been involved in large library projects might at least take a peek at this. I don't know if the city manager for Portola Valley has left yet.
Not till this spring.
Maybe she'd be willing to take a peek at it.
Sure.
Also, Sacred Heart has said that she'd be willing to help us, and she's been involved in a lot of these projects.
It's a facilities director.
Excellent person who really dots her I's and crosses her T's.
She has that she would be willing to advise us from time to time on our process.
I'd like her to look at that after we've had people here look at it. And given the fact that we're thinking about going to the council in December with 30 days out for proposals, feedback from project managers, I'd like to put that back possibly a month to January. And during that period, I'd like to put it on the website for public input. What that means, I have no idea. But I think that we are at a point in this process where it has not become substantive anymore. It's become politicized. And I think that given the fact that during the holidays is not a fair time to ask for project manager proposals, and it's not going to delay the 45-day comment period. I think
Let's see. That comment period starts in February, because we have the initial study and the draft. The hearing started in April. So, I mean, if we wanted to do that, perhaps we have the draft. We put the draft on the website and receive comments before we finalize it.
fine, let's put it on the website. Let's put everything on the website. And if people have a comment to make, it could be something that's very helpful to us. I mean, there may be something we're missing that's for the benefit of the town, that saves us money. It doesn't hurt, right? And it's legal to do so, whereas in some situations, like with the minutes, it's not right for us to do so. So if we can, let's do it. And let's try and limit these voices that we're hearing to whispers. So that's what I would recommend.
So I would recommend that we
Simultaneously is fine.
that we do it simultaneously, that when we have a draft, certainly that has already been reviewed by the town attorney, the staff, this committee, and the library, and then it's in a form that we feel fairly comfortable with, that it go on the town website for a comment period, and that we then bring it to the council meeting in December.
And if you want it to be a recommendation to the city council in December because of the comment period, and make it a 45-day period, not a 30-day period, so that it's not, strictly speaking, during the holiday season, it gives them an extra couple of weeks for them to respond, because that's a bad time. And again, it's as much for substantive as it is for political reason, not less. So what is our timeline now? Well, my suggestion is, if you're in agreement, is that we go ahead and have comments from the staff and from the city attorney, and hopefully those be expedited, and I will try and find out about that. And to the extent we get those in, that we immediately have the draft circulated on the website, as well as find out if the city manager of Portola Valley and the project manager at Sacred Heart would be willing to look at it as experts, or pretty good people in this area. And that we solicit comments from the public with regard to the draft. That we go to council in December. Okay. But that the comment, but that the period for solicitation be 4 to 5 days would be our recommendation, not 30, as is typical because of the holidays. And that's it.
Which would be, we bring the recommendation to council in March of 2000.
Well, we'll come back January, end of January, so it could be, if we met quickly at the end of January, we'd have 2 weeks to meet and go over things. We could still do it in February.
Yeah, and if we felt that we needed more time to renew the submittals, then we could bring it in March.
And it would be February or March to go back to council. with
Depending on,
recommendation.
depending on how many submittals we receive,
Public comment.
public comment. Depending on March, probably in February. I think that's a good idea. Do you have comments from?
No, I like that timeline. So all we know, at least up with the timeline.
And comments from library?
No, I actually like that. I think that also gives us an opportunity to update the GPA that we have.
We'll provide you what we have with a good clean draft as soon as we can. Do you have public comments?
I'd like to endorse the publication of the website. I think we have in the town a number of people who have very large experience in project management. And it's useful to give them the opportunity to comment on this, because the chances for cost overruns and other problems with a project manager can be significant.
Question first, is this draft available yet, or is it still in draft form and
It's still in draft form
not
and,
available for any of us to look at?
No,
Okay.
some of us haven't.
I support Kathy's recommendation on transparency, and I go back to my time on the General Plan Committee quite a few years ago, and I don't remember the issue, but I remember that the General Plan Committee labored for months on a particular issue with practically no public input. Nobody attended the General Plan Committee meetings. And then finally, the General Plan Committee made their recommendation. It went to the council, it got publicized in the almanac, and the next council meeting was stormed by members of the public who didn't like it. And the council overrode the General Plan Committee's recommendation. I think it's probably typical of Atherton that people don't get involved in the formative stages of anything, and they don't get involved until it gets to the council, and then unfortunately it becomes a big public issue. So I think anything that can be done to publicize this will be good. I don't like the polarization that seems to have occurred, and I think anything we can do to prevent it would be worthwhile. Also, I'm wondering if the project manager would be a contract employee of the town or of the district library, and how he or she would get paid, and is that part of the plan yet?
Yes, part of the plan is that the project manager for this would be a contract individual, and that the selection would be made jointly by this committee, town staff, and the library. And the reporting structure would be that the individual would report to the library and the town.
By the library, do you mean this committee?
Not this committee, the library, library staff,
The Atherton Library?
staff.
So the Atherton librarian would be the supervisor of the project manager, so to speak?
Along jointly with staff. It's a joint, in a way, it's a joint project.
Mhm.
Sorry, Sandy?
I was gonna, for Jack's benefit, correct me if I step on what you said. The project manager will be hired by the town of Atherton with the direction of the town council. Is that correct or incorrect? Okay, so
What
the
you just
answer
said-
is, it's not a library employee, it's a town contract approved by the council and paid for by the town out of library designated funds.
But then it also appears that the library, in quotation marks, whatever that is the supervisor of the project manager, or the manager of the manager, whatever you want to call it, that he's answerable to that committee.
I don't know that we're discussing who answers to whom. The question you asked was, what kind of employee is it and who does this person work for?
Yeah.
And I hope I gave you the answer as direct as possible.
Yeah, although it's still unclear.
Well, you're talking about what their scope of their work is and who they respond to.
Yes.
That's not something that was discussed. It's not intended to be discussed, because that's part of the RFP.
So that's to be determined.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I didn't want to, but I kind of
Well, I
saw
guess-
something steering in the wrong direction.
I
wanted
guess
to make sure.
I'm concerned that whoever the project manager is, no matter how well qualified, would in effect have free rein to do and recommend what he sees fit without any kind of controls or...
His position, his job description will be in the RFP.
But his reporting responsibility...
That's going to be in the RFP also. Yeah. But you wanted to know whether what his employment, this person's, or this company's employment status was, and who would they work for. And we can tell you that. I can't tell you what their job is, and I can't tell you who they report to, because that's part of the contract that the town will sign with the project manager.
Mhm.
I'm not going to sign it.
Yeah.
And that contract.
She's not going to sign it.
And the
town will.
contract is, we'll recommend the contract to the council and the JPA,
Mhm.
and the contract and the terms are approved by both bodies.
And I assume that whatever...
Actually, the contract will be approved by the town council. The JPA, the library's involvement is the agreement with the town is anytime library donor funds or the library fund is used, it has to be mutually agreed upon by the town council and the governing board, the library governing board. But that doesn't mean that the governing board would approve the contract. That the contract
Okay.
will be with the town.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yep.
Thanks.
So the town council will ultimately have responsibility for approving the recommendations of the project manager and...
That's correct.
so
That's
forth.
correct.
So
That's
you would not
correct.
have free rein, so to speak.
That's correct.
That's
No,
fine.
Sandy's correct, that the contract is with the town, and ultimately it's the town council that approves the contract.
Jack, I say this because in several months past, there's this assumption that somehow the library, and we can code it any way we want, is making some decisions on the behalf of the residents of this town, and that's not the case. The decisions all boil down to the town council's decision.
Mhm.
What happens we've elected these town council members, they're the ones that are making the decisions. The library doesn't make the decision, this steering committee doesn't make the decision, the LSA doesn't make the decision is made by the town council.
Okay, and I,
In almost everything.
We make
Yeah.
recommendations.
We make recommendations, but the council makes the decision.
mhm.
And that needs to be, and I say that to everybody because that's been a kind of this idea that no, they don't make the decision, the library makes the decision, or somehow this group here makes the decision. No, we make a recommendation,
You have
the
no
town
authority
council
to make
makes the
any
decision.
decisions.
Mhm.
And they employ who the project manager is going to be, and they employ, and they determine what the scope of their job and who they answer to. They could choose Jack Raynham as being the person that the project manager exclusively responds to, but that decision would be made by the council.
Well, what I'm concerned with also is the difference between perceptions and reality. And sometimes perceptions are not the same as reality, and I think many of the perceptions in the town are not the same as
And that was
reality.
what I wanted
And
to
that's,
try and
and
do
that's a,
for
that's a
all of us
problem
here,
that we all have.
where the control lies, and it's in the town council.
Right, and I'd just like to clarify, from the very beginning of this process, there was a committee prior to this one, which was the library task force, and we made two recommendations. They were recommendations to council. And those recommendations were approved, and this committee was then formed, and we were tasked to, oversee the planning and building of the new Atherton Library, including an evaluation of the site selection. Then we thought that it would be prudent, given that the park was one of the sites, to have the will evaluated. We made a recommendation to council, and council accepted the recommendation, and the JPA and the council approved the spending of those monies to do that work. We then worked on an RFP for the outside consultant to work through the site evaluation. We made a recommendation to council that this was the RFP we wanted to use. Council reviewed that RFP, they approved the RFP, and the RFP was initiated, along with the schedule that went with that. The planning department initiated the RFP for the environmental firm. The council reviewed that RFP, and approved the RFP, and they approved a recommendation made by the planning department for the environmental consultant.
Jack, can I ask you one question or two?
Yeah.
You clearly have concerns about the project manager and reporting and responsibility. How do you feel the project manager, to whom do you feel he or she should report and the responsibility should be?
Well, I think ultimately the council,
Okay?
and maybe council would delegate day-to-day communication and responsibility to the city manager, but ultimately to the council.
And if not to the city manager, what about the head of public works or?
Possibly. To me, it would depend on who that is. Now, if I don't know anything about our current public works director, if Duncan Jones were the public works director, I'd say, yeah, he should be the guy, because he is intimately familiar with the process, the CEQA process, and EIRs and all that sort of thing, and would be eminently qualified. And I would also hope that maybe he might apply for this job, if he's interested. But he's retired, and I don't know if this is a full-time job or a part-time job, and how much it would pay. Is that part of the
I don't think they
RFP?
discussed that.
You cannot discuss that in an RFP for professional services.
Mhm.
It is based on qualifications. It
But
is a
it-
qualifications-based selection.
But if it's a contracted employee, is it even contemplated as to whether it would be a full-time or a part-time job?
Yes, that'll be part, that'll be part of the contract in terms of an anticipated amount of time required for the project. And I think the amount of time on the project will change as the project progresses.
Are there any other fundamental concerns you have with regard to project manager and project manager contract? What I'm trying to elicit is
Well,
concerns that the community might have.
yeah,
Let's
I
get
guess
them out now.
my main concern is making sure that he would be objective,
That he or
To
she
the
would be
extent.
objective.
to the extent possible. He would be completely objective and responsive to the wills of the council and the community.
Well, okay.
And also, one other question related. I saw somewhere that it was envisioned that the phase 2 would cost $700,000 was a ballpark estimate, and I wondered if that still holds, or where it came from, or what that means.
Tell me where you heard that.
I don't remember, but I saw it in one of these documents.
We haven't talked about that.
We haven't
Yeah,
talked
Not from
about
us.
I can't,
Not from us.
I can't remember where I saw it, but it kind of
Phase
caught my
2 is the
attention.
construction of the building, so that number doesn't make sense.
Well, phase 2 is the design.
Planning.
And the
Planning design.
architect, the whole phase 2 process would be in that ballpark, and it sounds as though it could be a reasonable ballpark, but I just wondered if it is the ballpark, or you say now it isn't, and it
Well,
hasn't
let's
been-
make it clear, we don't know at this point.
We have an estimate that we provided in the cost estimate for the buildings, which was part of our report that we presented to the Park and Rec Commission, and to our presentation to the community on September 8th, and then to the council. It's just one of the documents, and it's an appendix in our report that shows an estimate for 2 sizes of building.
Mhm.
And there is a very rough estimate based on, the square footage of the anticipated building.
But it didn't have a breakdown.
It didn't have breakdown, it just showed
Total size.
soft costs and soft costs. That's
So that's
it.
$700,000, and I can't remember where I saw it, but then maybe I made a mistake and misinterpreted something. Okay,
Whether you misinterpreted it, saw it, don't rely on it. We don't
Yeah.
know.
okay.
I'm deeply concerned about getting the scope of work for this project manager. If you're selecting a person on the strength of professional qualifications alone, without being fairly specific about what the scope of that work and its responsibility is going to be, there could be serious trouble. I hope that the RFP will cover that completely.
It will cover that completely.
To the extent that one can begin to make a rational estimate of the cost of the project manager without necessarily, you'll get his rates in the responses, I hope, so that you will have an estimate of the total cost.
I believe, to the extent I saw early drafts, yes, that's covered, but that's also a reason for getting people like the city manager of Portola Valley and Sacred Heart involved, who were very careful about costs.
Good, that's important to me.
Yeah, we're really
Because money
interested.
spent here cannot be spent elsewhere.
And I'd like to reiterate how careful we are about the costs. The decision to go forward with the EIR, we have spent a lot of time evaluating it, looking at the risks, because it represents, by the time we include staff and planning time, more than $100,000, more than we anticipated. We did not make this decision or recommendation lightly or easily. We are really, really trying to be thoughtful and responsible about the recommendations we make concerning the spending of the funds, because every dollar we spend on outside consultants and the process, our funds not spent on the library itself and the things that will really ultimately serve the community. And that's also why we're all working to the extent that this committee and subcommittees can work and help this process through. Those are monies not spent by the town in seeing this process going
Well,
forward.
and as someone lately into this process, I would like to state that we will be watching.
Good.
That's
Good.
fine, but you should also understand that even the expert felt that this could have been resolved with a mitigated negative
Well,
declaration.
I don't challenge that.
So,
but we can
an
discuss
additional
that.
$100,000 is essentially being spent because of public concern. And there's no reason why that can't be, and there's no rational basis why we don't feel that we should be responding to it, but that's why we're doing it.
I
We
think
just want to make
whatever,
sure that clearly understood.
yeah, I think whatever we end up with, it ought to end up being a unanimous vote by the council reflecting an overwhelming majority of feeling by the community. And if it ends up a 3-2 vote by the council and a 53-47 feeling by the community, that would be very unfortunate.
There are a lot of unfortunate things that happen in this community, Jack. I think what's happened right now is incredibly unfortunate. I think that's the name of the game of politics in this day and age, and it certainly has become reflective of Atherton. And so I think that that would be nice, but I think that's very probably wishful thinking about just about anything these days. I think as soon as we start looking at the third site, and that being something like a parking lot behind the police, you're going to have a lot of people on Fair Oaks who wanted a traffic study, the only traffic study that I know of at a cost of $30,000 in this town. We're going to say, wait a minute, we don't want a library on that site. Look what it's going to do to our community.